everybody, welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name's Matt. Behind me, my 1980 auto car constructor. Now, if you guys have been following along since the beginning of this project,
Matt Stetar from Diesel Creek just faced the worst moment of his life, and it's even more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. Everything he worked for came crashing down, and the people closest to him felt the pain just as deeply. Could things have turned out differently, or was this disaster always waiting to happen? Tune in because this story takes a turn that will leave you crying your heart out for months. From genius to a life unraveling, Matt was born in a quiet little town in rural Ohio, the kind of place where time moves slow and everybody knows everybody. Golden fields stretched for miles under an endless sky, making it easy to feel like the world was simpler than it really was. As a kid, he found joy in the small things, watching raindrops slide down a window, hearing the hum of cicadas in the summer, and building contraptions out of anything he could get his hands on. His backyard was a science lab, a junkyard, and an invention studio all in one. He had a screwdriver in one hand and an idea in the other, always tinkering, always dreaming. Before we dive into this, it's clear that Matt Stetar's story is far more heartbreaking than anyone expected, and this won't be the only thing that will leave you stunned. By the time he got to high school, Stetar had earned himself a reputation. He wasn't just smart, he was the kind of smart that made people pay attention. He built machines from scrap metal, put together circuits from broken flashlights, and turned anything he touched into something new. People started calling him the inventor. It wasn't long before he led the robotics team to win competition after competition, stacking up victories like it was second nature. Then came the moment that changed everything. He got accepted into one of the most prestigious schools in the world. It should have been a dream come true, but in reality, it was the start of something else entirely. MIT wasn't just another school. It was a battlefield for the best and brightest. Suddenly, Stetar wasn't the smartest guy in the room anymore. He was just another student struggling to keep up. The pressure was suffocating. Late nights turned into sleepless weeks, and the constant feeling of not being good enough gnawed at him. It didn't matter how hard he worked, there was always more to do, always another challenge, always another reason to believe he wasn't measuring up. Slowly, the weight of it all started to crush him. At first, he told himself it was just part of the process. Everyone was struggling. But while others found support in friends, Matt buried himself deeper in his work. The more overwhelmed he felt, the more he isolated himself. He stopped calling home. He stopped hanging out. He stopped doing anything that wasn't related to proving, to himself, that he belonged. But deep down he knew the truth. He was running on fumes, and sooner or later, he was going to hit a wall. That wall came sooner than anyone expected. As finals week approached in his second year, the stress reached a breaking point. Panic attacks replaced study sessions. Instead of preparing for tests, Matt found himself staring at the ceiling at night, convinced that failure was inevitable. The once brilliant inventor, the small-town genius, the robotics champion, now just another kid drowning under the weight of expectations. Friends noticed the change, but Matt waved them off, always coming up with an excuse, always hiding how bad things really were. But here's the thing about ignoring problems. They don't go away. They grow. They fester. They wait until they can't be ignored anymore. Matt thought he could handle it on his own. He was wrong. And when everything finally fell apart, it wasn't just his future on the line, it was everything he had ever worked for. As he sat in his dorm, surrounded by half-finished projects and books that felt more like reminders of his failures than tools for success, he had a choice to make. Keep running or finally face the truth. The problem was, by the time he made his decision, it might have already been too late. The sun set outside his window, casting long shadows across the room, and in that moment, he realized something chilling. If he wanted to change the world, he'd first have to figure out how to save himself. But could he? Matt thought his dream was coming true, but he was about to learn that success can bring a heavy weight that's hard to carry. A rising star no one saw falling. Matt was the kind of guy people talked about with admiration. A genius. A rising star. Someone who had the world at his feet. His solar-powered drones weren't just impressive, they were proof of his unstoppable ambition. He wasn't just a student, he was a force of nature, changing the game while mentoring underprivileged kids who looked up to him like he was their ticket to something bigger. For a while, it looked like nothing could slow him down. But pressure is a beast that doesn't care how smart or ambitious you are. At first, it was just late nights, pushing through projects, telling himself it was worth it. Then the sleepless nights stacked up, the weight of expectations growing heavier, until what once felt like passion turned into a crushing need to be perfect. It crept up on him, small whispers of doubt turning into a constant roar. Panic attacks hit out of nowhere, his mind racing like a machine he couldn't shut off. Yet he put on a mask, laughing with his friends, telling everyone he was fine. That word fine became his lie, his shield, his excuse. Then life threw a knockout punch. His father died. Just like that. The one person who had cheered him on from science fairs to MIT was gone. The grief was suffocating, like a hand around his throat. Suddenly, the world didn't make sense anymore. The guy who was supposed to change the world couldn't even get out of bed. The dreams, the drive, the hunger to achieve, it all faded into the background, swallowed by a grief that felt like it would never end. Desperate to feel anything other than pain, he reached for prescription pills. At first, they gave him the control he craved, numbing the thoughts that wouldn't shut up. But relief is a tricky thing. It tricks you into thinking you're okay when you're falling apart. Soon it wasn't about control anymore, it was about escape. His grades tanked. His passion disappeared. The spark that once set him apart was gone. People noticed. Friends reached out, worried. But he pushed them away. Admitting he was struggling meant admitting he was failing. And failure wasn't an option. Eventually, he couldn't keep up the act. He dropped out of MIT, going back home as a shell of the person he used to be. The once bright and unstoppable Matt had been swallowed by the darkness, and the dreams that once fueled him had become nothing but distant memories mocking him with no direction, no purpose. He sank deeper. Pills became an escape. Then a necessity rehab. It was just a revolving door, one step forward, two steps back. Every failure chipped away at him, convincing him he was beyond saving. His addiction didn't just hurt him, it bled into the lives of those who loved him. His mother, the strongest person he knew, sold family heirlooms to pay off his debts, each sacrifice a reminder of how far he had fallen. And the whispers started. Wasted potential. What a shame. He heard them everywhere, echoing in his head, turning him into a ghost of the prodigy he once was. Desperate for some form of stability, he took a construction job. It wasn't glamorous, but at least it was something. But the universe wasn't done with him yet. One accident, one moment of bad luck, and his leg was shattered, leaving him with chronic pain that became its own kind of prison. The doctors gave him pain meds, and he clung to them like a lifeline. It was supposed to be temporary, just a way to get through the pain. But it didn't take long before the need for relief became another dependency. The pills were an escape, a way to silence everything. His grief, his failures, his past. He had once been full of hope, but now everything was slipping away faster than he could hold on. A life that could have changed the world. By the time he turned 28, his life was a ruin. No job, no home, no future. The kid who once had the world in his hands now slept under bridges, scrounging for the very substances he once thought he controlled. Equations that used to come effortlessly were now scribbles on discarded napkins, fading like everything else in his life. He had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the brightest futures could crumble into nothing. He wasn't the first brilliant mind to be cast aside, and he sure wouldn't be the last. People love a success story, but they don't like the messy parts, the failures, the struggles, the downward spirals. Those parts get swept under the rug like they don't matter. But they do matter. They mattered to Matt, and they should matter to all of us. On a freezing December night, Matt dragged himself into a free clinic, his coat barely held together, his eyes hollow. He didn't need a doctor to tell him what was wrong, he already knew. He was tired of the pain, the hunger, the feeling that no matter how hard he tried, he would never be enough. He just wanted someone to care. But the clinic was packed, the staff stretched thin. They pointed him toward a shelter, but that was full too. Just like that, he was back on the streets, alone. How many times had he ended up here? Too many. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the end. The streets were empty, the city silent except for his footsteps. Every alley, every shadow felt like it was closing in on him. His hands shook, but not from the cold. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the one thing that had always been there when no one else was, a syringe. People would call it an overdose, but the truth? The world eliminated him long before the substances did. When the news broke, people pretended to be shocked. Professors, old classmates, people who hadn't said his name in years suddenly had so much to say. I'm going to pop this cover off of here and have a gander at the fuel rack. My D318, which is the next size up from this engine in the Bias Erie 22B, did the same thing last year up at the STEAM show. They talked about his potential, his talent, about how tragic it was. But where were they when he needed them? Where were they when he was drowning? They gathered at his funeral, dressed in black, whispering their regrets. Snow covered his coffin, cold and silent, just like the world had been when he was alive. And the only thing anyone could ask was, could we have saved him? The answer was simple. Yes. If someone had seen him, really seen him, instead of just his intelligence. If someone had reached out before he fell too far. If someone had cared enough to remind him that he mattered, not because of what he could do, but because of who he was. His death wasn't just a personal loss, it was a failure of all of us. The world praises genius, but it doesn't protect it. It uses people up and spits them out when they can't keep up. But brilliance should never come at the cost of a person's humanity. Now his name lives on, but not in the way it should have. A nonprofit in his honor helps struggling minds like his, offering guidance, support, a chance to be more than just a forgotten name in a news article. Scholarships under his name remind students that mental health matters as much as intelligence. His notebooks, once filled with ideas that could have changed the world, now serve as blueprints for something bigger, a system that actually cares. But for every success story that comes from these efforts, Matt's death remains a warning. Because there will always be another Matt. Another mind too bright for the weight it carries. Another person lost in a world that only values them for what they can give, not for who they are. We can do better. We have to do better. Not just for Matt, but for every person who's still out there, still struggling, still waiting for someone to see them before it's too late. The world praises smart people, but it often ignores their struggles. Matt's story was not the first, and it won't be the last. The price of thinking differently. Throughout history, some of the most brilliant minds have been at war with the world around them, or worse, with themselves. It seems like genius often comes with a price, and for many, that price is loneliness, depression, or a deep disconnect from society. Some push boundaries too far. Some were misunderstood. And others were simply too ahead of their time. Whether it was the weight of their own thoughts or the crushing expectations of the world, their struggles left a lasting mark. And if history tells us anything, it's that brilliance and torment often walk hand in hand. Vincent van Gogh is the poster child for this tragic connection. His art now sells for fortunes, his name is immortalized, but in his own lifetime, he was a starving, misunderstood outcast. His mind worked in ways few could grasp, pulling him into spirals of deep sadness and wild imagination. His paintings, full of swirling colors and raw emotion, reflected a mind both extraordinary and tormented. He didn't live to see his success. His battles with mental illness ended in his own hands, a gunshot cutting short a life that the world only learned to appreciate too late. Then there was Virginia Woolf, a literary force who reshaped the way stories were told. Her words took readers deep into the human mind, exploring thoughts and emotions in ways few had before. But inside her own mind, things were far from beautiful. Mood swings, relentless depression, and a crushing sense of isolation followed her through life. The pressure became unbearable, and in the end, she chose to slip away, leaving behind works that would change literature forever. Ernest Hemingway lived like a man who feared being caught by his own thoughts. Adventure, danger, war, he sought anything that would keep his mind occupied. But no matter how fast he ran, the darkness inside him caught up. Decades of internal battles and self-destruction led him to a tragic end, proving that even the strongest personas can crumble under the weight of their own minds. His writing, so sharp and bold, came from a place of pain he never truly escaped. Mathematician John Nash was hailed as a genius, but his mind played tricks on him. His breakthroughs in game theory changed the world, but behind the scenes, he fought a different kind of battle. Paranoia and delusions took over his reality, pulling him into a world of fear and confusion. He eventually found some stability, but the scars of schizophrenia never truly left him. His life was a testament to both the brilliance and fragility of the human mind. And then there's Robert Schumann, a musical genius whose mind wouldn't let him rest. He heard things that weren't there, fought demons no one else could see, and poured it all into his music. His compositions are celebrated today, but in his own time, his struggles overshadowed his talent. By the end of his life, his mind had betrayed him completely, leaving him locked away in an institution, unable to create the very thing that once gave him purpose. For centuries, People have wondered why genius so often walks hand in hand with suffering. Studies suggest that the same traits that fuel creativity, deep thinking, emotional sensitivity, relentless curiosity, can also be the seeds of mental torment. It's a dangerous mix, the ability to see the world in ways others can't, paired with a mind that refuses to rest. Writers, musicians, artists, scientists, their brilliance often comes at a cost, and sometimes that cost is too high. Researchers have found links between creativity and mood disorders, and the statistics are unsettling. Writers are twice as likely to battle depression, artists often struggle with anxiety, and musicians frequently turn to substance abuse. A study of hundreds of thousands of individuals found that those with creative talents were more likely to have a history of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Even their relatives, those who shared their DNA but not their fame, showed similar patterns. It's as if creativity itself carries a burden, passed down through generations. But why? Some theories suggest that a mind wired for divergent thinking, the ability to see endless possibilities, also struggles with shutting down negative thoughts. The same imagination that dreams up masterpieces can also create nightmares. Overthinking, obsessing, dwelling on the past. These habits are common among highly creative people, and they can quickly spiral into depression and anxiety. And when society fails to understand or support them, the weight of it all can be unbearable. There's also the issue of personality. Highly creative individuals tend to be more open to experiences, more sensitive to emotions, and more prone to intense highs and lows. This makes for groundbreaking art and revolutionary ideas, but it also makes them vulnerable. They feel everything deeply, the beauty and the pain, the joy and the despair. And when that despair takes hold, it can be impossible to shake. Then there's the social factor. Society loves to celebrate genius, but only when it fits the mold. The world isn't always kind to those who think differently. Many of history's greatest minds were mocked, ignored, or cast aside in their time. Their ideas were too radical, their methods too strange. It's no wonder so many felt alienated, misunderstood, or completely alone. And for those already battling mental illness, that isolation can be devastating. But here's the thing, not all brilliant minds are doomed to suffer. Many find ways to manage their struggles, to channel their pain into something meaningful. Some break through the darkness, finding balance between their talent and their well-being. And today, there's more awareness than ever about the mental health challenges creative individuals face. The conversation is changing, and with it, the hope that future geniuses won't have to walk the same lonely path. Was Matt Stetar's downfall just a series of unfortunate events, or was there something deeper at play, something no one is willing to admit? Could this have been prevented, or was he doomed from the start? Tell us what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.